Hello everyone, good morning. I'm Liz Thomas from ICT SkillNet and I'm joined again today by Paul O'Brien from CalcuRisk. You're all very welcome to this webinar where we'll run an in-depth demo of the new Cybersecurity Risk Assessment Program. It's going to take us around 20-25 minutes and then we'll do 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. If you do have any questions along the way, you can raise them through the Q&A function in Zoom, which you will have access to. We'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Paul now, who will run you through the demo.
Great. Thank you, Liz, and good morning. You're welcome. The screen you're looking at is, I've gone into the system here, so the screen you're looking at is what you'll be presented with. And when we built this with ICT, this particular framework, we looked at core elements that some of you, particularly the IT professionals, will be familiar with, are the core elements of standards like NIST. So you're looking at preparedness, prevention, detection, response, and recovery. And in risk terms, these are the platforms, if you like, on which risk is managed. So if I start with the preparedness, just by clicking on the risk, I come to what is in the system the most detailed and probably complex looking screen. It's a relatively intuitive process. So what we're going to do is we're going to go across the top bar. So we look at the risk detail, then look at the analysis questions, look at some options, and then move over onto the task platform. So that's what I'm going to take you through. But just as we're here, I'm going to show you some of the functionality and features that you could look at. So, for example, you can change the risk owner. In some cases, depends on the organization, it's possible that the IT professionals will own the risk. And in some cases, it's the business management that will own the risk. And sometimes it's a combination of both. And it is possible to transfer the risk between the two. A couple of other things to look at is there's a status bar. And the status bar, all the risks have been identified, so that's their starting position, if you like, but they can be analyzed and evaluated. So once you've done the initial assessment, you make a decision, and that's whether that you consider that they have been sufficiently evaluated and analyzed to the point where you can do something with it. And the next thing you do is make an evaluation decision. So that's basically a typical risk language. You treat, tolerate, terminate, or decide to do something later on. You just change that status. So if I go through across the top bar, the first issue, I suppose, or the biggest step is to go into the analysis. So what's in here are a set of questions. And these questions, together with the others from the other four risks, combine to give the agreed question set that the group with the ICT decided were the base camp, if you like, of cybersecurity. And this is all part of a very broad national process. So what you're presented with are what has been agreed as the key questions that should have a positive answer in order to be at that base camp level. There are some of you who will go way beyond the base camp. Some of you will be looking for certification to ISO or to NIST or to any of the many and varied international cybersecurity standards. But this gets you to a certain platform. And one of the things that we've included in it is an indication as to what standards would be satisfied if you have a positive answer to this. So Article 5, 1.1 in ISO 27001, for example, will require that you have published information, documented and published information security policy. So basically, using the I button feature, you can get a flavor for as you build your way to the base camp, you are actually satisfying some of, and in actual fact, quite a few of, the requirements of a bigger standard, a higher standard, a level beyond that for now you don't need to go to. But if you choose to, obviously this is a good platform and it's useful. So basically, with the question set, let me point this out here. So at the beginning, you establish inherent or pre-controlled risk. So basically, you establish from a set of criteria which are in the system, you establish where am I, if I know controls, how big a risk is this to the business? And it's the business you're talking about. How damaging could a failure of this risk be to the business? And that's expressed numerically in the pre-control. And then as you go through the system by answering the question, I'm just going to turn this one to no and watch the number. It moved from 9 point whatever to 10.93. So in the background, there is a value on this. So I'm going to change that back. And probably the best way to demonstrate it is I'm going to move just out here into a risk report. But what's happening in the background is you are generating a risk register. So if I go to reports and I look at the risk register, and I go to a standard risk register, this is available in the background. So this is the risk I'm dealing with, which is the preparedness risk. And if you look here, these are the controls. So these are the primary issues that, as you go through the analysis, that you're answering yes to. So basically, you're attesting that those controls that are represented by the question, by saying yes, you're attesting that they're in place, and that comes into your risk register automatically. So also does the calculated value. And this is the residual risk, which you see here. That's the same number I pointed out earlier on. The other questions, which are answered either no or don't know, and these are the key questions, those questions appear here in this column as additional mitigation options. And the additional mitigation options are things that you've answered no or don't know to, but are relevant and probably will form the basis of the action or the tasks that you're going to undertake in order to achieve the base camp standard that is built into the ICT program. So if I go back from there and go back to the risk, if I go back into the analysis, and if I now change the 2 or 3 of these to yeses, all contractors and third parties are required to follow the information security policy and procedures as applicable to their work. It's a big question, but if you answer yes to it, a couple of key words. One would be the all. So it's important that whatever policy you have, anybody going near your systems, that it applies to everybody, and that the contract is well in place. So basically, the degree to which you answer the question is entirely up to yourself. So you need to think through the all and always aspect of the questions, because one of these things we'd often be concerned about, you'd often see it's possible to get something right at a point in time, but then it falls out of control. So what you're trying to do with the question is answers in a way where you're dealing with the all. So every contractor, all the people employed by the contractor, all the people in the contractor's location that is likely to have access to data, for example. You need that assurance. So in some cases, you'll be going to an external party to find that out. In some cases, you will know that yourself. Most of the IT providers would make sure that this is happening with all their personnel. That's the norm. The other thing is, for example, in an upgrade systems upgrade? Are all the relevant systems upgraded, and are they upgraded together? Are they upgraded at the right time? That's the kind of question. You're answering it, you answer it for the all and always. So all the people trained, and do they always do it this way? Think that way before you put the yes answer in. If not, and you feel you need to go and do something, then just answer the don't know. It's an option. Answer don't know, and you can come back to it. It flags, and you can come back to it later. Well, basically, that's the process. And when you get to the end of that, you can move on to the options bar. And basically, what's happened with the options is those things that I've said no or don't know to have been presented on a platform. And the platform gives me the option to do something about them. And in order to do something, all I need to do is press the select button and process. And when I do that, what's happened is I've been assigned a task ID. So the system has now given me a task ID, and it means I've moved over across the top bar to the tasks piece. So if I go into this and I click on the task, I'm now presented with, within the system, a form that allows me to look at what the recommendation is. So basically, as a result of this don't know or no answer, and picking it up and putting it into the tasks, I'm looking at the recommendation that says users should never keep a record of their authentication information unless done through an approved method. Okay, so this is post-it notes with the passwords under the keyboard and all those things that we all know about. Basically, what you've got is, you've got somebody who has done an assessment and said, I don't know, or no, users don't always follow the approved methodology of keeping their passwords, their password codes. And so what you now do is a description. I'm going to put in something like train. And say train everybody and make sure it's enforced. And I can never spell while I'm typing in front of somebody. So basically what I've now done is I've opened a task, and depending on who should do that, and the probability is that's internal. One of the issues is there's a relationship between, particularly for companies that don't have their internal IT, and they're using an external IT provider. A lot of the time, the IT provider will have control over certain things, but for example, probably wouldn't have control over this. So this is an internal discipline in the organization that is a management responsibility rather than an IT provider's responsibility. But nonetheless, in preparedness terms, it represents a threat or a source of risk to the organization that is basically a behavior issue. And it's a best practice or a good practice issue, which will be advocated without doubt by IT professionals, but needs to be enforced by the culture of the management of the organization. And many times, as you know, probably from the email and the way things get attacked, oftentimes the leadership and the management of the organizations are probably the worst, because they want something done in a hurry and they need to do this and they need to do that. They're oftentimes, and I would myself be sort of included the same way, it can be the worst. But what that does is it displays, it gives everybody bad habits. So find a way to do it, find a way that is straightforward, that satisfies the requirement, and get it done. So basically that's the task. And once the task is open, you simply assign it a date. I'm going to put it out here till the 28th. And you can describe the task type. So in this case, it's a training issue. And you can decide a task owner. In this case, I give it to myself. And once the task is saved, and by the way, you can attach a document to it. So if it's a written process, you can attach a document to the task. And you can share it with whoever you need to share it with. If you save it, and then basically what's happened is the opportunity has opened up now to add a new comment. So for example, if I'm the one doing this, I say, so basically I'm saying there's a document attached, which is a draft, and the training starts on Monday. So this is my response to the task that I've been sent. Okay? It's a response for now, but it isn't sufficient at this point to close the task. So we leave the task open. And what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to save and close it. I'll leave it open. And I'm going to go out and have a look at some of the reporting. So if I go into task reports, and there's probably a load of stuff in here already. So basically, the system will tell you pretty much anything that the system has been instructed to do, or any of the instructions that are around it. So if I look at a task that's created, and I simply take the full report. So you can tailor the report to pretty much anything you want. And this comes out in Excel. You can take it out. You can print it. It prints it prints out as in a register form. So basically, these are the tasks. You can go take a look at these then by individual, if you want, by department, by the type. We talked about the type. The one we looked at was, the one I assigned was training, whatever training went. Oh, there it is, yeah. Set 2 rooms. To me, there's a lot of stuff in this. So I'm looking at my tasks. So you can see this one is in the report here. Now, if I go back and go out to the system dashboard, so basically that's kind of the reporting tool, and that's available to you. And then at the highest level, the system has a set of dashboards. And if I look here, these are mitigation actions or tasks. If I look here, then this is my task. And I can see it from the dashboard. And I can also get a separate view here. I don't know what status I set it to, but basically, I can look at the tasks here as well. And here's my task again. So I've got from the dashboard a rolling and continuous image of where I'm at, both from a risk perspective and from a task perspective. So if I look at the risk assessment status, this widget gives me a summary of all 5. So if I click on the red bit, which is where we said no, and you look at the preparedness, you'll see here that there are 3 issues that are either no or don't know. So basically what this widget is doing is it's showing you where you're at any given time. And any of these you can print through PDF, Excel, and take them out. You can sort them pretty much any way you want. What it gives you is the risk description and the question that has either had a negative or a don't know answer. And generally it presents the principal controls. It also gives you an idea of what hasn't been answered yet. So that gives you a feeling for where you are along the journey. And most people will be surprised when they do this initially. That's been our experience, that people are surprised at how good they are. Sometimes they'll go back and they'll say, well, maybe not all and always, and they begin to do to fix some of the minor stuff. But for the most part, people would probably come into this with the IT provider or the local on-site IT guy, and I'd be surprised if 50+% of the controls that should be in place to meet this base camp level are already in place, and probably many more. Usually it's a tweaking exercise. I'm going to go just back briefly to the main menu here. And one of the things in risk terms that informs the assessment. So first of all, you do the assessment and you believe that a control is in place. But oftentimes what you look at is evidence that perhaps the control is not as strong as you think. So basically, when you get an incident or a near miss, you get something that's happening. The system allows you to record the incident. So this might be, let's say, a 2-hour downtime. Recording a 2-hour downtime on the server. Now, while that might be something simple and explicable, once it's recorded and you have it in the system like this, what you can get is you can begin to recognize that there's patterns. And if you begin to see patterns by simply recording it, you'll get to see the patterns. And I shouldn't have gone here because I have to do a whole lot of things. It forces you to put a whole lot of stuff in. So let me do that. It's probably going to make me put a date in as well. Okay. I'll select a type. Okay, so basically you've got a couple of drop downs in the incident that makes it that you can facilitate it and begin to band it into certain places that makes the reporting simpler. The reporting is exactly the same as the task reporting. So basically it's a selected report from which you can pick pretty much anything and simply save, and hopefully it will close it for me now. And there it turns up on the risk on a register type report. So by clicking on it, you can get a look at it. And again, you get back in and you get more detail. You can modify it. You can decide if there was action taken, what corrective action or preventive action needed to be taken, and so on. But it's useful in simply gathering it, just collecting the nature of the incident and the fact of the incident helps inform the improvement process, and helps challenge the potential weakness in one of the controls that you in the assessment have attested is strong. I'm going to go back, and I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to go back here and just take one more look and show you a couple of reports. I go back into this risk, and inside the risk detail screen, there is what we call a risk report. And by pushing this button, basically you get a summary of where you're at with this particular risk. And again, this can be exported, but it gives you an idea of what your level of risk is. And if you've done this and saved and closed it a couple of times, you'll get an idea of what's happening over time with the risk. You'll also get at the bottom an indication of the tasks that have been complete. So what it's doing is it's building evidence of your activity as you move towards the completion of the process. And one of the things we find with people who have access to this, and this is accessible from the dashboard as well, by the way, one of the things you find with it is when people are seen to be making progress towards a standard or towards a goal, towards an achievable goal, we want to get 100% of this, we want to get to the base camp, it motivates the continuation. It means that people will do the task because they can see that the task is getting complete, and now suddenly I only have a couple of additional mitigation options and most of my controls are strong. So over time that builds, and just the fact of using the task manager, the incidents to inform the validity of the answers and that whole process, that motivates people to keep doing it. And again, these reports can be taken out either exported or they can be printed. So it's a useful summary. And if I go back to the dashboard for a minute, and in some cases, with the dashboards, there are in total 10 rights within the system. And if you, depending on the right you have, it is possible to get, I think in the offering that we have with the ICT, there's an opportunity to put 5 users in. And some of those users could be external. So they could be, maybe if you've got a data processor, for example, you can ask the data processor to get some assurance from them. You can send some of the questions out to them to make sure that they are also, if you like, cybersecure in the sense that they are minding data that you're sharing with them. The other issue that you can use additional users for is sometimes senior management might like to look at something, look at bits of the system and see how progress is, and they can do that by coming into the dashboard. And the dashboard, basically, if you navigate it, for example, the pre-control risk, this gives you, or the post-control risk, this gives you an idea of where you are with the risk in a heat map. So there's movement from the original positions into the new positions. So you can see the contrast and the difference. And I just wanted to take you back to the incident. So basically, the incidents are here, and depending on the nature of the incident, again, you can take a look at what the incidents are from the dashboard. So you get a management view of where you're at, both along the journey of the risk process, the risk assessment process, and along the task, the mitigation, putting the tasks, doing the task, getting stuff done, and also if you've got the evidence of incident, that also is available, basically with the push of a button. And these are look-in. Whoever comes into this with a view-only right can change nothing. They can simply look. So, Liz, I think I've probably overstayed my welcome. So that was as fast and as I can do it, I think. Any questions?
Thanks very much, Paul. I think at this point then we'll go to any questions that anyone might have. If you haven't raised them yet, you can do that in the Q&A function. And we do have a couple of questions in. Paul, one for you. Can I add my own controls if I have things in place that are not in the system?
The straight answer is yes. And that does happen. Sometimes, let me just go back to the risk we were looking at. And there's scope in the risk detail screen to do that. And it does sometimes happen. Sometimes you might say no to a question and there's an explanation. And so here is a place where you can put, down the bottom here in this expanded field, is a place where you can put this. We had an interesting one about physical security around data, around basically a data room, physical security around it, and they talked about cameras and all the rest of it, and somebody had dogs, 2 very serious guard dogs, and they were additional controls. So yes, you can basically, if you've got something, and an awful lot of the time, the IT professionals will have additional controls. They do. They might have additional logs or things like that that might be called for in the question set, and literally you can put in there the additional logs and that you can put in that control, and it will if we spell it properly. If you spell it properly, you'll see it turning up in the risk register. So simply save that. So the other thing that you might recognize is that it's possible also to put in additional gaps. So you might know of weaknesses in your own control environment, and again, if you put them in, they will turn up in the risk register. So if I go to I'll save and close that. I presume I saved it, and just nip out and have a look at the reports. Now, the one thing about that, when you do put in the additions, they don't influence the maths. So they won't be included in the residual risk scoring. And that's principally because there you go. So without the W. So here it is in the risk register, turns up in the risk register, but it won't affect the mathematics, the logic of that. If it's something that you think is a universal thing, then we could put it in, but basically you can continue to fill that here. And also on the here, if you think there are additional things that should be in place or could be in place that would improve the situation, you can put them in here as well. You can also turn those into tasks, by the way. So there's a manually added task, because the task doesn't have to come from the risk or from the system. You can put in your own tasks into the system. All right, I hope that answers the question, Liz.
Thanks, Paul. We've got another one that's come in for you here. Can the application export the reports in a format other than PDF? The reason for that is, what if the report has to be sent to a client? Can the application track by incidents by client if we're a business, I assume, IT provider supporting many customers?
Well, an IT provider supporting many customers, they would have multiple contexts. So they would be, so first of all, they'd be separate. So each customer would be separate. And yes, the reporting is available in pretty much anything, PDF, Word, yeah, Excel, any format. Let me give you an example. I'll quickly look at a dashboard. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, right through it. And the reporting functionality is there you go. You can take it out as PDF, SGV, whatever, any file you want. And that's, yes, and I probably know where the question is coming from. If you want to do a monthly or whatever, monthly report to a board, absolutely. And the report, it's possible to assemble the report. So, yeah, and the images can go in and text around the images, and the any of the reports within the system, the task report and the rest of it can be built out and sent to image. We would spend a lot of time, basically a lot of our clients would be reporting to boards, reporting to senior management teams. So yeah, absolutely, that's possible, and that's yeah, it's an essential part of it.
Perfect, thanks, Paul. I can see another one's come in there. Is there a commission structure for IT providers? So I'll take that one. The simple answer is yes, this is through ICT SkillNet, and this is a grant-aided program. So we can give financial incentives for IT providers that are able to bring more than 6 companies to the program. And do email me separately, and I can give you an idea of what that structure looks like for those of you that are in that space. We've got one more question there, Paul. It was thanks very much for answering your last question, Paul. The separation by client is important because we only want to report the instance specific to that client. I think you did answer that, Paul, in the sense of if an IT provider had multiple clients within the system, then yes, you could just pull the reports for that client.
Oh, yes. And the idea is that we would always keep the clients separate.
Exactly.
So the ICT SkillNet has the entity, and then each of the clients would be set up as a context.
Yeah.
And if the IT provider is managing all 6 or 10, then absolutely they have their own login to each of those contexts, and they can work away inside them, and it's completely separate. The business of one client is not the business of another, and they're never mixed.
Exactly.
So, done my password as they go in. So yeah, that's one other thing, just on your question, and we have had this question before in a prior session. For IT providers, we have a rolling venue set for training and implementation. But if somebody comes with 5 or 6 and they want to do it internally, or they want to do it in a hotel close by where their client base is, if the client base is in around the same geography, then by application, just talk to Liz and we'll organise that, no problem.
Absolutely, yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Paul. That was another one that came up. What if I can't make the upcoming workshops in Limerick, Dublin or Cork? Have I got any other options? So yes, we do have workshops coming up in Dublin on the 9th of July, Cork on the 24th of July, and Limerick on the 15th of August. As you said, Paul, for IT providers, if you have a bundle of clients, we can do that on site at your premises or at a venue of your choice and do a bespoke one for you and your clients. And for companies that none of those dates suit or location doesn't suit, we do also have options for the remote onboarding workshop as well. So we could do that via a Zoom or a webinar and get you up and running as well. So we have options which should cover all bases there. Now, I don't think we have any other questions. Come in. So hopefully that's been useful and given everyone a more in-depth view of the system and the capabilities. Again, just as a reminder, if you'd like to proceed, you can book directly on our website, ictskillnet.ie, or email us on csi@ictskillnet.ie to join one of the upcoming workshops or kick off the implementation. As a reminder then, the pricing is $480 per participating company for those that are eligible for the grant aid, and that includes a 12-month license to the system, the onboarding workshop, whether that's remote or live in person, and then the bi-weekly online support forums. I think on that note then, we've just about come to a close for today. Thanks again everyone for joining. Do keep an eye out for the next in our webinar series. Another new program we have, launching a cybersecurity aptitude test on the 8th of July. You can find out more about that on our website on ictskillnet.ie. But for today, I'd just like to say thanks very much, Paul, again for joining us. And we look forward to being in touch with all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.